Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Daniel Wass. He is a shareholder at G10 Galuppo Law in Carlsbad, California. I don't know a whole lot about the legal profession, and he most certainly does. So I am so excited to talk to you, Daniel, because I'm sure you can impart some wisdom for us today.
Yeah, I'm basically Gandalf. I got all the wisdom you need.
Excellent. So let's back up and talk about, when did you decide you wanted to be an attorney?
Oh, I was about 6 months old, crying, and I thought I should cry at someone who has the power to change something. No,
It
really,
doesn't even surprise me.
I've thought about being a lawyer since I learned what it was in high school. When I was in high school, the administration was trying to shut down a school newspaper and trying to silence students that were protesting things and trying to punish students for the things that they would say in the newspaper. And they weren't like illegal things. They were just saying, like, somebody had an article about religion, I wrote an article about the dress code and how I don't think we should have a dress code. And the school tried to crack down on that, tried to silence it, and it really bothered me because I just had in the back of my mind an inkling of the idea of the First Amendment, that's not something they can do in a public school. But there was never a lawyer to take my case. And then in undergrad, when I was at UC San Diego, the student government was trying to shut down newspapers again, and a TV station. A TV station that I was a member of was going to broadcast a clip from the Iraq War, and the student government said, "Oh, we can't have that," and also the
We just lost you. You there?
This is the kind of stuff that happens in communist potatoes. And it was really frustrating to us. So I thought, if I'm ever going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be the kind of lawyer that takes that call. So I decided to be a lawyer. And it was those experiences in my formative years, running up against a wall of illegal acts by a government or quasi government entity, that really inspired me to want to be a lawyer so that I can stop that from happening in the future.
Outstanding. So Stu, do you still deal with a lot of that kind of thing today?
Yeah, I actually helped this newspaper at UC San Diego find a lawyer and get them in contact with a First Amendment lawyer to sue the school, and they basically won. It was called a case called Koala v. Khosla, and the Koala newspaper, a satirical newspaper, had its funding revoked by the student government, and the administration backed up the student government because they wrote an article making fun of safe spaces. It was satire, it was opinion, it was not illegal, but the government revoked the subsidy that they got, that all newspapers could get from student activity fees. And the government's not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to cut off subsidies to people based on the viewpoints they express. That's the core of the First Amendment, prohibits that. So I helped the school newspaper get in touch with a lawyer. I couldn't take the case, unfortunately, because the newspaper has no money to pay, but I got them free legal help. They sued the school in federal court. It went up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They won. They changed the law, or at least reaffirmed what I believed the law to be in the Ninth Circuit, which is the 9 Western United States. And now, as a result, students are more free to express themselves than they ever have been in college campuses. And the stupid administration at UC San Diego we found out through public records requests, they spent $800,000 over the course of 3 or 4 years trying to squash a student government newspaper over a subsidy of $400. That's how much they had taken away, and they spent $800,000 on legal fees. They had to pay out money to the koala. They had to pay out money to the koala's lawyers. They had to pay out money to the ACLU. It's $800,000. It's insane. So whenever something like that comes up, I try to help students. And I'm a consulting attorney with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's sort of a think tank that defends free speech on the internet, and it's based in San Francisco. And they have a list of attorneys they send out cases to see if we can help. And I've taken a few of those. So whenever I can, I try to defend people who are having their First Amendment rights threatened.
I mean, isn't that happening a lot just today in politics?
Well, I mean, some politicians are actually suing people in San Diego County, locally where we live. There was a politician named Michelle Gomez who ran for San Diego County Supervisor and also ran for City Council in Oceanside. She did not pay some of her campaign workers. Those campaign workers complained about her to the newspaper, and then she sued them for libel. And it's not libel, it's not defamation if you're saying something that's true or something that's just your opinion. But she sued them for libel, and I represented one of those workers and beat her, destroyed her lawsuit, and then she filed for bankruptcy. So now we're dealing with that. So
Okay.
she drove herself into bankruptcy. And she's not the only politician around here that's done that. Corey Jensen, I think it was Corey Jensen also in Oceanside, who got this attorney named Brian Peace, who's actually a First Amendment attorney and should know better, but he sued people, and that got an anti-slap motion filed against them, and then now she owes attorney's fees. So these politicians, I think with the election of with Donald Trump, who just sues everybody for everything, he has the 20-year history of filing frivolous lawsuits, loses every single time, never ever won an action for defamation against everybody, always loses, but makes a big deal about doing it and claims that everyone's defaming him all the time like a little crybaby. And all these other politicians are looking at the president and thinking, oh, that's what we should be doing. What if he's doing it? Why aren't I doing it? And so they have started filing their own frivolous lawsuits. And one by one, they're learning the same lesson that Trump has learned, which is that you're going to end up paying the attorney's fees of the people you sue. But it's still a threat. Those kind of lawsuits, even though they are unsuccessful, they still threaten people's First Amendment rights, because to defend yourself against a frivolous lawsuit costs money. You have to hire someone like me. And although I win every time, you still got to pay me up front. So
Right.
it's really dangerous when politicians do that, and it's very disappointing to see. But for so long as I have a law degree, I will continue defending people threatened by those kinds of
I just
lawsuits.
love your passion. Oh my gosh, it's so great. So let's talk about, people who are thinking about getting a law degree or going to law school or becoming a lawyer. What can you tell them? Is it a good move? What's your experience?
Don't do it to get rich. People think lawyers are rich. They're not. They're just regular people. They make regular salaries. It takes a long time before you end up getting a salary that you're like, oh, okay, this is comfortable. My first job out of law school in 2011, during a recession, just like we're kind of still in now, I made $36,000 a year, no benefits, no retirement plan, no job security, and I had $120,000 in student loans. If you go to a law school without like a full ride scholarship, you're going to come out with at least, at this point, at least $150,000 in debt. And the interest rates on student loans are incredibly high. 7, 8%. Mine were anywhere between 6.5% and 7.5%. And they vary depending on the federal funds rate, but it's expensive to go to law school. And when you come out, you're not guaranteed a job that can pay off those loans. So you have to go into forbearance and do these repayment plans. I just paid off my student loans this year. It's 2021. I graduated in 2011. It took me 10 years to pay off the loans, and I still have friends that have, some of them have more loans that they owe than they did at the beginning because of the interest. And
Oh,
if you
yeah.
plan on going into public service or doing a public interest kind of role, working for a public defender, sometimes you're not going to have the money to pay off those loans, and you're never going to be able to pay them off. So really be realistic. And then the second thing is, if you want to go, you're thinking about law school, make sure you actually want to be a lawyer. Some people go to law school and think, oh, this is a degree. It's like a Swiss Army knife. I can do anything I want with this. I'll be a businessman. No one's going to hire you if you have a law degree, unless they're hiring you to be a lawyer, or maybe a paralegal if you don't pass the bar. But people look at that. It's not like an MBA. You get a JD, a Juris Doctorate, because you want to be a lawyer. If you get an MBA, a Master's in Business Administration, you can do all kinds of businesses and such. But a JD, you're going to be a lawyer. That's what that says to employers. So make sure you want to do that. And then the third thing, if you hate reading and writing a lot, or public speaking, really reading and writing. If you hate reading and writing, don't be a lawyer. That's all I do, is reading, writing, and then sometimes public speaking. And I love all three of those things, and I'm very good at all three of those things. But there are a lot of people who hate reading or who aren't careful readers, or people that write, but they're sloppy and they misspell things. Commas matter. You can Google, there was this $1 billion case that turned on a comma being in the wrong place.
Wow.
You can Google that because you really have to be careful when it's legal language. So if you don't like reading or writing or public speaking, don't do it. But on the other hand, if you're like me and that's what you do all day anyway, like I write plays, I write emails, I write stories. I have a YouTube channel where I do little tricks. I
Oh,
go out on stage, I act in community theater. So reading, writing, public speaking, I love that kind of stuff. And so the lawyer job is basically all I was meant to do. I can't imagine really myself in another job, except maybe an actor or a screenwriter, I guess. But those are like pie
coming
in the
soon.
sky kind of things. But yeah, that's my advice for budding lawyers.
Okay, so in terms of selecting a law firm, now you've passed the bar and you're going to go work for a law firm. How do people make a decision on that?
I made the decision based on who would hire me. At first it was literally anyone. I aimed at geographic areas. And then whoever would take me. That was my goal. Now I can be more picky because I have a lot of experience, and I actually get calls from friends who work at law firms trying to recruit me to leave my current firm and go somewhere else, and I've said no every time so far. But when you're first starting out, you want to try to look at where you like to live. That's, I think, important.
Mhm.
And although if some jobs, if they let you work remote, then maybe you could live in Hawaii. But look at where you want to live, and then if you really do want to practice a certain type of law, then you'll want to look at the law firm's website to see their practice areas. What if you go to a law firm, a civil litigation firm, not criminal defense, but any kind of non-criminal law? They sometimes, once you're there, you can ask the boss, like, "Hey, can I do some First Amendment cases? I'm really interested in real estate disputes. Can we add that to our repertoire?" And they'll let you do that. And that's what I've done at my firm. I created practice areas in appeals. They didn't do many appeals, but now I'm a specialist in appeals, and I do a lot of them. And First Amendment law, and those are the two big things that I like doing. But when you first go to a firm, you're going to be practicing whatever areas of law they already have. So if you look at a firm and they only do criminal defense, you're not going to be able to get there and say, like, I want to do personal injury lawsuits for a slip and fall. That's not what they do. So they're not, the boss doesn't know how to do that. So they're not going to let you do it as a new lawyer. So look at practice areas and geographic location. I think those are important. And then the pay. Big firms have lots of big high salaries, like 500 attorneys or more. Smaller firms have much lower salaries, but the smaller firms have a better work-life balance. You have more time. You have the flexibility in the middle of the day to take a half hour and talk to you. But big firms might not be able to do that. They'll pay you a lot more, but they'll work you to death. So look at the firm size, the location, type of law they practice, and then think about salaries. If you have a salary requirement, big firms pay more than small firms, but they're also harder to get into because of that. You got to go to a top law school, and I mean tippy top, to go into some of these big firms like Latham and Watkins or one of those. But the other firms that are smaller than that, you can go to other law schools, and it matters less the name of your school when you get there.
I see. And so in terms of selecting a school, what's the criteria for that?
Go to the highest ranked school that you can afford. There is a list of law school rankings, US News and World Report,
Mhm.
and they rank law schools. It doesn't mean that one's actually better than the other. It's an arbitrary ranking that a defunct magazine has made, but still employers do look at that, at least for brand new law students. Somebody fresh out of law school has zero experience. And so how is an employer going to tell whether that guy's going to be a good lawyer or not? You've got nothing to compare him to. You can ask him, have you ever written a motion for summary judgment? No, he hasn't written anything. He's just graduated yesterday. But if he went to Harvard
Yeah.
versus Thomas Jefferson, you know that the guy who went to Harvard has at least been vetted a couple of times to get into Harvard, whereas Thomas Jefferson accepts anyone who applies
Wow.
to law school. And Harvard's bar passage rate is like 95%, whereas Thomas Jefferson's is like 50% or less. So you can just look at the statistics of the schools and the outcomes in general, and then the employer will make a decision based on those statistics. So if you can go to Harvard, go to Harvard. Because it's funny, the school that had a couple of years ago the most debt, the graduates had the most debt, was Thomas Jefferson. in San Diego, which is one of the lowest ranked law schools in the country. They're barely making it. They're
Wow.
barely a law school. But their graduates had the most debt. And the people at Harvard, they get sometimes full rides. They get a lot of financial based aids because Harvard's got like a $20 billion endowment or something. They have plenty of money. Whereas Thomas Jefferson just had to sell its building and move into office space that they're renting. So they're raising the prices for a substandard a law school that is like a bad brand name. It's the Kirkland brand. It's the generic,
Right.
it's like the DeVry School of Law, but versus Harvard, which Harvard could charge a premium, but doesn't because they don't need to.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, go to the highest ranked law school that you can get into and afford. If you get a full ride to Thomas Jefferson and you've already got a job lined up in San Diego because your dad's a lawyer or a judge, then okay, go to Thomas Jefferson. There are plenty of fine lawyers that came out of Thomas Jefferson, and I don't mean to disparage any of them, but it's just that the law school produces graduates that, on average, fail the bar, and that cost a lot of money to get to that point. But a full ride, you'll still have a law degree, and you won't have any debt. If you got a job lined up, then a local school like Thomas Jefferson might be even preferable to Harvard if Harvard is not going to give you a full ride.
So in terms of, let's just say you want to think outside the box and you're going to Thomas Jefferson, and you've already said that when you apply for a job, you may not have the experience that they're looking for. Is there anything that you can do in addition to, learning that would give you some credit for knowing something more than what you are getting in school?
Yeah, you can see if you can get hired as a paralegal after you graduate from law school. Just tell a law firm, hey, I want to be a legal secretary, even if it's just answering phones. I'd like to be in the office and just get exposed to the law. I'm a new grad. I don't have my bar passage yet. You can pay me what a legal secretary would make. I'll work for $45,000, $50,000 a year. Just for maybe 6 months. And then we hired a guy at our firm who had that experience during law school. During his summers, he'd gone and when you're in law school, you can be a summer associate. It's called. You kind of do legal work, but under the supervision of an attorney. But if you can just get work as a paralegal, at least you're in that firm. And then if it's a firm you like, you can ask the boss after you pass the bar, hey, can I do some legal work for you? Can I get a salary increase and then be a junior associate? And maybe they'll be like, yeah, I know you, I like you, and we have a job opening position, and it's so hard to find good people. So yes, we'll promote you from being a secretary to an attorney. We have someone else at our firm who she was a paralegal working for us for 5 years. She had not gone to law school. She was just like typing, and she'd check the title records for buildings and things for us, just do secretarial work. Now she's going to law school. So it's sad to lose her during the year, but during the summers she comes back down, and we hire her to work for the summer. And she's such a nice person and a competent employee that we know from working with her in a non-lawyer capacity that once she passes the bar, she's probably getting a job.
Yeah.
So just get your foot in the door any way that you can. That's one way to do it. And when you're in law school, when you do summer internships, make sure you're doing substantive, real legal work. And if you do it with like the state government, there's again, it's a really good chance that you'll be able to get a job there afterwards, or with wherever you're interning during your summers. Try to do it at a place that you think is going to have job openings after you graduate.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. Okay, well, are there any other words of wisdom you want to share, or anything you want to share about your current workload?
One more thing. I have gotten several job interviews, not because of any real legal experience that I've done, but because I was on Wheel of Fortune and I ran for California governor with my prize money. I'm not kidding. I got an interview for a clerkship with the Chief Justice of the Alaskan Supreme Court because he wanted to know what my final puzzle was on Wheel of Fortune. So I did not get that job, but I got the interview. So if you do something really interesting like that, put it on your resume at the end. And people might want to interview you just because that's kind of cool. If you're on Jeopardy, especially, put that on there. It looks a lot better than Wheel of Fortune. So try out for some game shows. That is a piece of advice no one else is going to give you, but it helped me get some interviews, and it's something interesting to talk about if you run out of things to talk about at your interview. And it lets you display your personality too. A lot of why we hire people is based on whether we get along with them. And if you show up to the interview and you're kind of shy and you don't say anything, they might not hire you. But if you're gregarious and happy, even if you're an idiot, then you might get hired because you just seem like a nice person. So if you have some fun thing to talk about that you're passionate about, like being on Wheel of Fortune or running for Congress when you're 25, that's something you can bring out to show your personality during the interview. And that might get you a job if your brains do not.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You ran for governor, right?
Yeah, I did in the 2003 recall election. I'll tell you right now, I want to run again. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to pay the filing fee. It's like $4,000 this time, but I love running for governor.
Oh, your personality, you'll raise that in an afternoon. Are you kidding me? Seriously, start a GoFundMe.
Yeah, I might. I very well might.
Here you've got another one going, right?
Yeah, I'm going to have another one because I have this card game. I invented a card game called Uncivil Litigation. It's about lawyers who fight in court, and I put myself in the game. So that's something else you could bring to your job interview. So invent a card game, Uncivil Litigation, and here are the rules. And I'm going to have a Kickstarter campaign for this soon.
Let me know. I'll definitely contribute.
Yeah.
So who did all the artwork?
Oh, I hired a guy on Fiverr, one of these task crowdfunding, not whatever it is, gig economy websites, and he's some dude in Venezuela named Gabriel. He's a brilliant artist. It was like $20 per picture though. It was a great deal, and that probably that lasted him 6 years in Venezuela.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
you are amazing. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. I really appreciate you talking to us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.